This is the 27th hearing in the last 6 years on fixing No Child Left Behind or related elementary and secondary education issues. I hope we're not far from a conclusion about how to fix No Child Left Behind. We're 8 years overdue, which even by Senate standards is a long time. I hope we're coming close to marking up a bill. From the beginning of our work to try to look at the No Child Left Behind law, which was enacted in 2001, we tried to follow Representative George Miller's advice. He said, let's just fix the problems with it. Let's don't start from scratch and rewrite the whole law, and that seemed like it made a lot of sense. And so we tried to see if we could identify the problems, and there were really only a limited number. We identified 8 or 9 at that time. And from my vantage point, generally speaking, we're not far from reaching a consensus on the problems where we haven't had a consensus. Basically, the problem areas, the areas where we haven't got a consensus, or at least I don't see one at the moment, you might put under the umbrella of accountability. By accountability, I mean goals, standards, annual tests, disaggregated reporting of test results, and defining success or failure for teachers and schools, as well as the consequences of that success or failure. Now, thanks to each of the 7 witnesses here, you've addressed that in your comments. On some of the things I just mentioned, we pretty much agree, like the need for a new goal. On other things, we still have some work to do, like on whether or not to keep the 17 annual federal standardized tests. This morning we're holding a roundtable. Our aim is to make this a little different than a hearing. We have 7 witnesses. We'll have several senators coming and going because there are other hearings going on. And our hope was that this would be more of a conversation than just a back and forth. I'll conclude this short statement. I'll ask Senator Murray to make a statement, and then I'll begin the conversation. I'll ask Senator Murray to go next, and after that, Senator Burr, and we'll see how we do. I think if I were to suggest one word to the senators and witnesses, it would be succinctness. I mean, if you'll try not to tell us every single thing you're doing the first time you speak, we'll have a chance to have a conversation about a variety of issues. And you're here at a very important time, because if I'm correct that we're not too far from a conclusion, you're coming at a time when you can actually help us figure out what to do. The questions that Senator Murray and I ask you to address, which you did in your testimony, is what is your state, district, or school doing to implement innovative approaches to improve academic outcomes for students, particularly low-income and at-risk students? And second, how can we improve the federal law to encourage more states, districts, and schools to innovate? And when I say law, I should also draw attention to the regulations that have followed the law. For example, every state has to submit a plan to the federal government to receive its share of the $14.5 billion Title I program distributed to states for low-income children. That's about $1,300 for every child who lives at or below the poverty line. 11 million children. That's a lot of children and a lot of money. These Title I applications are reviewed by the Department of Education as well as outside experts before you can spend a dime of that money. This is Tennessee's application for Title I. I can barely lift it. It's got a lot of direction in it. Now, in addition to that, 42 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico are operating under waivers from the out-of-date and unworkable regulations in No Child Left Behind. To receive those waivers, states have to submit waiver applications. This is Tennessee's waiver application. So this is a waiver, this is an application for a waiver from this. That waiver application was 91 pages long with more than 170 pages of attachments. Since 2012, the states had to submit 8 different updates or amendments to its plan. Now, Tennessee happens to be a state whose goals are about the same as the U.S. Department of Education. In other words, they're doing about what the department wants it to do, yet they still have this waiver from this, 8 updates. In the case of Washington State, they had this revoked, this waiver, And so they're back operating under the No Child Left Behind rules. Now, in addition to all this, the U.S. Department of Education spends another $9 to $10 billion or so on about 90 different programs that are either authorized or funded under No Child Left Behind. Separate applications and program requirements for those 90 different programs. These include Promised Neighborhoods and Investing in Innovation, which we'll hear about today. So the question we ask you is, are we spending this money in a way that makes it easier or harder for you to innovate and achieve better academic outcomes? My own view is that the government ought to be more of an enabler and an encourager of innovation, not a mandator. The Federal Government's proved it can do a good job of being an enabler and an encourager. For example, just this last year, we all supported the Child Care Development Block Grant Program that gives grants to states that allow parents to receive a voucher for the child care of the parent's choice so the children can attend school and the parent can, well, so the parent can go to school or work. 7 decades ago, the GI Bill enabled World War II veterans to attend a college of their choice, helping them to become the greatest generation. Today, half our college students have Federal grants or loans that follow them to the colleges of their choice, enabling them to buy the surest ticket to a better job or lives. About 98% of the Federal dollars that go to higher education follow students to the school they attend, 98%. K-12 funding is very different. The only money that follows students to the school they attend that I could find is the school lunch program. So I'll now turn to Senator Murray for her comments, and then we'll begin our conversation.